Welcome in to the Hot Read podcast for Friday, June 1st. There are only 30 days in May, right? Isn't tomorrow June 1st? Does that sound right to you?
Buddy.
Do we know? I don't know how many days there are in months. I know there are 28 days in February.
There are 31 in May, buddy.
Are there? Hey, welcome in to the Hot Read podcast for Friday, May the 31st, because of course there are 31 days in May. I am, of course, your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined as always by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, my fellow knower of 31 days in May, how are you?
I'm good. Only 18 minutes late today, which if you're new around here, which many of you are, this is a thing that happens. But today we had
you need to back me up that today it was more technical issues than my tardiness.
It was a technical difficulty issue.
I was here
more than not, but you were indeed here. However,
it's not often
today is an unforgettable day in our nation's history. Do you know why?
Big news today?
Big news today.
What's going on?
The Chicago Bears are officially going to be the team on Hard Knocks. An unforgettable day. The only thing that happened
on
today
in August. Let's go.
In our nation today that was truly monumental today. So had to get that out there because what a big decision there.
Big decision.
Put the Bears on Hard Knocks.
The only thing bigger than that is, of course, like 10 seconds ago, Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies, which is hilarious. And it's gonna here's my take. This is as political as this show's ever gonna get. You ready for this? Clearly, like whether or not I've not followed this trial super closely. Maybe he's guilty, maybe he's not. Whatever. It sounds like it was the whole point was like manufactured to be a smear campaign because that's what we do in politics now. We just our entire goal is to smear the other side. Like that's everybody's goal apparently. And so clearly, like Democrats are very happy because now the thing is like, oh, well, if you vote for Donald Trump, you're voting for a felon, which sounds like a good tactic on paper, because now you can do the whole like don't vote for a felon thing. Decent campaign strategy. That then backfires on you, however, and will be hilarious. If he wins, then it's like, how bad was your candidate if he lost to the convicted felon? Like last time it was Hillary Clinton, how bad could she be to lose to Donald Trump? Now it's like Joe Biden must actually be dead if he lost to Donald Trump. Like it's going to look really bad for whoever loses, is all I'm going to say. And I think they both suck and they're really both crappy candidates. So that's, that's my take.
I saw
another tweet. Can we get a fresh set? Can we do can we refresh and get younger, better versions of each would be my ideal.
I saw a tweet that said that right now is the perfect time to get the Tua
news dump anything
now.
Anything that could be bad PR. It's time to slide that in right now. PR departments across the country trying to figure out what uncomfortable things they can let out at this time in place. Derek saying, please stay on sports. I hate politics in this country because both sides are not so bright. I mean, like, Derek, it sounds like you and I are on the same page because that was basically my take just now. Okay, that's as political as this show's ever going to get. We are today going to focus on something far more interesting and one could argue far more substantive than American politics in 2024, and that is the Tennessee Titans OTAs. Week number 2, JT and I were there. I broke JT into the facility yesterday, and we had double trouble, double cameras, double eyeballs on the goings on. And so we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of clips to show you on today's program. We are going to be going through some of what we saw and heard regarding Will Levis, a lot of Will Levis footage to show you today, and an interesting answer to a question I asked Brian Callahan about his starting quarterback. Some offensive line talk revolving primarily around the first-round draft pick, J.C. Latham. Some thoughts on him from some folks that work with him. We're going to hear from Brian Callahan and Lloyd Cushenberry on J.C. Latham and his start. And then the Burks hype train, Traylon Burks. I don't know if you've noticed, JT. It is chugging down the tracks. A handful of videos. We had our first chance of this offseason to speak with Traylon himself yesterday. So some things that we heard from him in his press availability. And then we'll end on some defensive topics. We had a sighting of a unicorn on the defensive practice field yesterday, as well as some videos to share with you from Cheeto Bay, right? Isn't that how Rand pronounced it? Cheeto Bay, the tropical location where they grow the Cheetos and they're harvested by Frito-Lay. Cheeto Bay Awuzie videos from his press conference yesterday, and then one quick clip from Arden Key. So that's all of that. We're going to get to all of that here in just a second. If you are tuned in with us live today We appreciate you being here. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a couple of favors. First of all, if you're on Twitter or on Facebook, leave those places. Head on over to youtube.com and search Broadway Sports Media. Find the Broadway Sports Media channel, and you will find this live stream currently going on there. You can click on that, and in the comment section of that live stream is where you can be a part of today's conversation. Join Derek and Kenneth in the comment section. We want to hear your thoughts, comments, questions, queries on anything Titans, anything OTAs, anything Donald Trump verdict. We'll give you our expert political opinion at the end of the show. We aren't going to do that. Okay, let's start with some general takeaways, JT. It was your first day out there, so I'll cede the floor to you, my friend. What were your thoughts about the practice, the facility, the people we talked to? Just any overarching takeaways for you?
I mean, two things. First of all, thank God it was not like 90 degrees or something. We've had some pretty decent weather here in Nashville. You know,
Actually, don't worry. When I send you in my stead in August, it's going to be nice and warm.
I'm so ready.
Get ready to sweat.
I was talking to Kayla Anderson yesterday while we were moving different fields yesterday, and she was like, "Thank God, I'm going to live in the moment and not take this for granted
you have to gotta do it.
In another 2.5 months." And then also,
God, by next week it could be 107 degrees. Let's be honest.
And then the cicadas are like basically all but gone. Finally, we're getting rid of them. So like,
are we sure about that?
I don't know.
Do we think it's ending, or do we think it was just wave one? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not as
established on the show. We are not cicada scientists. So.
Anyways, not hearing them around there yesterday was also very nice. But you know, a lot of good things going on at practice, especially with the offensive line. I know me and you, we were talking about how we wanted to kind of divide and conquer yesterday, and you spent a lot of the day with Will Levis and looking at how Will Levis did, and then I spent a lot of the day with the big boys in the trenches, literally with them, you know, watching Bill Callahan up close and personal cook, as you have done many times already, and I am on the same page with you, as it is a coaching masterclass day in and day out, getting to watch him only about 10 feet away from him. So that was very exciting, and that's how we were able to divide and conquer yesterday.
Yeah, you certainly caught more of the offensive linemen, so I'm going to lean on you a little bit later in the show on that topic. As for general takeaways, a healthy handful of drops yesterday offensively, which you're going to see happen. I saw a couple of people, we posted the videos. I posted a lot of Will Levis content on Twitter yesterday, and JT, let's go ahead and pull up that video. I was playing around with some slow-mo on my iPhone with some Will Levis video yesterday, looking at mechanics, looking at spiral and footwork, and just trying to get a better feel for how quick that releases, which is lightning quick. But we had a handful of drops, and that's not to be unexpected. During the offseason, I had some folks commenting like, "Oh, I saw a lot of drops today." Yeah, you're going to have some days like that, man. The key is don't stack them. And if it becomes like, hey, once a week during the offseason, guys are dropping the ball like crazy, then it becomes a thing. But one day in May where people just have lazy hands or derpy hands, like whatever, I'll ask the receivers why sometimes you just drop the ball. Maybe it's a focus thing. That's not really super that concerning to me. I am doing a great job of having all of my notes pulled up ahead of time for the show. So allow me to vamp for 1 second while I go and find the list of people that were not at yesterday's, again, voluntary OTAs. We were missing out on DeAndre Hopkins, Colton Dowell, NWI, L'Jarius Sneed, Kenneth Murray, Harold Landry, Jalen Duncan, NPF, Tavondre Sweat, TK McClendon, and Jeffrey Simmons. Now, a handful of those guys, just veterans you expect to miss some time. DeAndre Hopkins, everybody losing their mind over that. He's at or near the top of the list of guys that I don't really care if he's here or not right now. He also did a panel with the On3 event that's going on downtown. So like now Will Levis also did that panel and he was at practice, but I don't really care what he's up. It's voluntary. These are voluntary OTAs. The players negotiated for them to be voluntary in the last CBA agreement because they asked the owners for more money, and the owners said no. So this is what they got, and if they're taking advantage of it, I don't really care. Now, if you're Jaquan Jackson, if you're Kyle Phillips even, and you're missing out on these practices where like you've got something to prove and you need to take every advantage, then I might be like, well, I don't know what you're doing exactly, but I'm not going to. I'm going to side with the union guys on this one and say, if you want to take advantage of the voluntary period, take advantage of the voluntary period. Now,
I was going to say it was
Yeah.
also pretty interesting to, we've talked about, there's been some rumblings about OTAs altogether just not being a thing anymore. That was a
Right.
big topic of contention that we probably really won't talk about today, but it was asked, as a lot of the players either had just faintly heard about it or other guys who were like, is that actually happening? Like, I know someone asked Lloyd Cushenberry and he's like, oh, is that happening? And then they're like, no, 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 no. But like, it is an interesting idea that we could eventually just not have OTAs right now and have them later,
Well,
right?
but
Like,
I better say they'd be shifting them to basically have
yeah,
the ramp up begin earlier in July. And then I kind of hate that idea from a media standpoint. Obviously, it's not about us, but man, if we like, you'll as you cover training camp more hands-on this year, you will realize here in a couple of months just how by the end of training, the last 2 weeks of training camp, it's like, I don't know what to talk about. This is a slog. Can we please, 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 God, please get to the actual games? If we made that longer, it would be really tough to keep people engaged. It helps to have a little taste of the offseason here in May and June, and then we take a break, and then we start it back up in August, and we put the pads on. That's what I think it should stay. And I don't know. It sounds like it's in the fledgling process of becoming a potential thing the NFL considers, NFLPA considers. So we'll cover that more if it becomes more of a thing down the road. Kenneth asking in the comments, was it mostly on the receivers? He's asking about the drops. I saw a lot of high balls from Levis clips. I saw this kind of narrative in the comments on Twitter yesterday that like there's a lot of ball. Why is the ball sore on Levis? I don't know, JT. Maybe you disagree. I didn't. First of all, every drop I can remember yesterday hit the receiver in both their hands. So definitely on the receivers. I have a handful of clips on my phone that I posted where it's like, it hit Tyler Boyd in the chest and it just bounced off him. So no, the answer is I don't think the drops were on Will Levis. And then as for him soaring balls, like I didn't notice that really as a problem at all yesterday. I went back when I saw people saying that, I went back through every clip I had on my phone and I started counting like, yeah, that was high. That was off the mark. Good off the, and it was like, I mean, I feel like I have like 20 to 30 clips of him throwing yesterday. And that's kind of all I was doing yesterday was focusing on him during the open period and filming him. And I counted like 3 or 4 balls that were kind of high, but catchable. So no, but if he was, and this is the transition here, if he was not quite on the mark yesterday, and maybe I should have asked, we didn't get to speak to him yesterday, but if we did, I would have asked him whether or not that was the case. He may have said yes. And I would imagine the reasoning behind that would be, we heard from Brian Callahan at the podium, and we don't have a clip of that today, but he was talking about how they're kind of working on his mechanics, working on the arm placement as he comes following through the level of his elbow. And I'm not a passing expert. I am not a QB coach. We leave that to our buddy Sean McAvoy here on the show. But from what I understand, it is about elbow being tighter to the body, and the follow through and the footwork, just the general mechanics of his throw. They are tweaking some things on that front. And I noticed it looked kind of funny, or not funny, but different, just looking at the way he throws. Some other beat writers, I was talking to Terry McCormick yesterday, he noticed it as well. And then we asked Brian Callahan, and he said, yes, we are working on those things. So wouldn't be surprised if there's some wrinkles to be ironed out on that front as he's trying to change some things. But I'm sure the idea is for it to be for the better, right? So, anything else on Levis? We got 2 clips. Let's show on Levis now that we've shown plenty of slow-mo footage here for you on the YouTube channel. Let's play first this clip from Tyjae Spears. Spoke to him yesterday. By the way, total side note, a lot of drops yesterday on the Titans practice field. You know who didn't drop the football? This guy, because I was watching Tyjae alone and he noticed me and I was on my phone, and then he just said, he screamed hands and threw the ball at me. You think you have good hands, then an NFL player throws the football at you and screams hands. Didn't see how confident you are. I caught the ball and then I threw back a perfect spiral to him, actually. So I'm on the team now. I was speaking to the coach earlier today. We're working on the contract and everything, but that was something that happened yesterday. I did not drop the ball. Many other professional NFL players did drop the ball. Do with that information what you will. However, Tyjae was asked yesterday after him and I were playing catch on an NFL practice field, hey, Will Levis, year 2, what do you make of his growth? What do you make of him as a leader stepping into a bigger role, the clear bona fide starter role? And here's what he had to say.
see the confidence, you can see like the work that you can see the not so last year, like not the early on leadership. He didn't have that because he wasn't a starting guy, but now you can see the early on leadership. Like every chance he get, he like break the huddle down and he leads us and like he reloads things. He ain't just gonna let anything happen. So you can see all those things early on.
And then we spoke to Brian Callahan. I asked him about the interview he did. And JT, I think you read it. I'd imagine many of our listeners read it. It was an interview with Albert Breer on SI earlier this week. And he was Brian was walking Albert through some footage of Will in his office. I think Albert came down here to do this interview, and they were talking about some of the things that sold Brian Callahan on joining the Titans, on becoming a part of the Will Levis experiment. And he was showing him a clip from the Falcons game, Will's first start, that was an example, or maybe the example, for Brian in terms of, this is what sold me on. I want to come coach this guy. I think he's got phenomenal talent. And the gist of the throw was bad decision, incredible throw, incredible arm talent, incredible accuracy. And that's the kind of thing where Brian, in the piece, and I recommend you read it, he said, I can coach up the decision making. If you've got that toolbox at your disposal, we can work with that. And so I asked Brian, okay, so what does that look like in this offseason process as you're trying to coach up Will Levis on becoming a better decision maker? You're trying to get him to improve between the ears because he's got physically what you want from him. What does that look like? And here's what he said.
Asking him on a per play basis. What does this progression ask? What is he supposed to do with his footwork? Where are his eyes supposed to be? We're teaching the system first, and then as you get into situations like today being a third down day, you get the chance to look back and say, well, hey, this was a 3rd and 4 decision. Could you have made a different one? Could the ball gotten out quicker? We don't need to hold on to it in this particular instance. So there's a lot of coaching of the situations that go within teaching of the system. And so where we're at in our process now is more about teaching the system and what's expected. And then you add the situational layers as you get more comfortable with the install. So we're about done with the installation part of the offense. And now it becomes more of a memory and recall and starting to pair a lot more things together. So it's coming together at this point, and then by training camp, we should be ready to roll, and guys should know what to do and how to do it.
And that's the thing that I find most fascinating. Obviously, his point that right now we're focused on the install, making sure he knows this offense inside and out like the back of his hand. Then in the July, August portion of the offseason, that's when we're going to focus on the situational ball, making sure he is mentally put through the rigors of as many different possibilities as they can fit into the time frame that they have, because with experience, with reps comes knowledge, comes power. I found that answer interesting, and I think that's a narrative, that's a storyline I'm going to continue to kind of harp on. I want us to continue to harp on later on in the summer, because if that's the primary goal, and man, the difference between Will Levis having this whole offseason to be the guy and them tailor the classroom and the practice field to what best benefits him, as opposed to last year where he's fighting for second string reps, that's a massive change.
I agree. And I think with that comes hand in hand this new system that Brian Callahan's bringing in. I feel like a lot of the time last year when Will Levis was in the game, you can go back to like even that Jacksonville game, right? The Tim Kelly system in that game specifically really only worked when there were design plays that Will Levis understood in that playbook. And I remember talking about that.
It was a training wheel offense.
It was. And I remember thinking about that game where it's like in this system, Will Levis only thrived when he knew what he was truly doing, because that's really the only experience that he got. Now putting him in this Brian Callahan system, like you said, as the guy, and not only as the guy, but also, in a Brian Callahan system that has been more receiver to quarterback friendly, making more design plays where that this guy, things are going to work out in your favor most of the time, is something that I think Will Levis can build some confidence on. And then with that confidence comes more of the decision-making ability that hopefully leads us to less of those, throws where they're in the defenseman's hands.
I agree. We can move on from Will Levis because we'll be talking plenty about him as the summer goes on. Let's do some offensive line talk, JT, but some JC talk, JT is what I meant to say there. Before we do, got to sell the show a little bit. If you're watching with us live, we appreciate you being here. Make sure you're doing so on YouTube at Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Hit subscribe while you're there. We're trying to build up that channel as much as possible, putting a ton of effort into daily shorts, clips from the show, and of course the full-length live shows. You can find all of that stuff over there. I think you will really enjoy it, and subscribe if you're going to enjoy it. That's all we ask. It's there for you for free consumption. All we ask is that you hit that subscribe button and hit like on the videos, because that helps us with the algorithm as well. Okay, JT, the offensive line yesterday, you got a good, I watched a little bit of them, but not nearly as much as you. Honestly, when I was watching them, the thing that stuck out to me, and I don't know why my eyes were, and I was talking to Zach about this on a football show just a couple of hours ago. What drew my attention was Dylan Radins and just how different he physically looks this offseason. Now, maybe that's something that you want to talk about a little bit, but my primary question for you is the left side of the line, the Skoronski, JC Latham, Lloyd Cushenberry trio. Those are the three I think everybody was focusing the most on over there. What did they look like before we get to some videos from them and on them?
The biggest word I can say is powerful. I mean, we were the parts that we were allowed to kind of record and whatnot were a lot different from individual drills. It was more of Bill Callahan having them, work in tandem, setting either setting an edge, shifting to another position to pick up a different blocker, or in the case of a lot of the videos we're going to show today, hitting the initial block and then moving to the next level to kind of pick up that what would be on a real field like a linebacker, or moving to the next level to help with run blocking in that sense. And all I could really say is for Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, and especially JC Latham, was the power that I saw in them, as well as the kind of, I know you took some videos of JC on Callahan's, his greatest invention, Bertha and Olga, those guys, but also Peter Skoronski looked really, really good using those sleds yesterday as well. But man, on some of the bigger sleds, JC Latham it's so easy for him, man. And you can tell that power just comes naturally for him.
Are you talking about the long one where it's the bar and they double?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called a shiver sled. I think I saw on the side of there. I don't know why.
Interesting. Either way, I'll have to pay attention to that next time, to find out exactly what it's called. But if it is called the shiver sled, he was moving that with ease, and you could tell that with, sometimes he would be paired up either with Lloyd or a different lineman yesterday in those practices. And when they make that initial contact to hit the sled, JC hits it so easy that he has some space already in it. And you can see the other guy also trying to put as much as he can into it to get to the same level, but JC is still able to beat him on that. Just really good to show man, this guy, it comes naturally to him. And it makes me super excited to see him once we get the pads on.
Yeah, it's called a shiver sled. I don't know why. We'll have to ask why it's called that, but that is what it is. And you're right that I noticed, not in real time, but going back watching some of the footage you took, the way that JC would knock it so far, they'd have to readjust it before the next guys could go because of the indifference between how hard JC hit it and the next guy hit it. We're going to show some of JC going up against the what's the name of the other sled? Now I'm blanking on sled names. Bertha and Olga.
Yes.
There's a name for it, but I forget what it's called. You guys know what we're talking about. The video of him doing that on May 10th at rookie mini camp that I took, and then a video from yesterday, May 29th, less than 20 days later, kind of demonstrating how he's been coached up and the work ethic that he's been demonstrating with the Titans so far. But first, a video from Brian Callahan, his head coach. We asked him about what he has seen from JC Latham, both as a performer and as a player in the locker room and as a teammate and a leader. And here's what he had to say.
He doesn't carry himself like a rookie, which is always a good thing. He's very intentional about his work. He works really hard. He spends a lot of time on this. I think he understands, which not all rookies understand, that it is a job. And there's an expectation, especially when you're drafted where he was drafted, that you got to come perform. And I think that he's aware of that. Not everybody always is. And he's got some maturity to him, but he's also has a youthful wonder that's kind of fun to be around. Everything's new to him. There's just a lot, and he just loves playing football. And so there's this kind of enthusiasm that he carries with him around the field that I think is fantastic. And he's getting better with the techniques. You know, I think it's going to be really fun to see where he ends up between now and the next couple of weeks, and then when training camp starts, when the pads come on, that's we're going to find out a whole lot about a lot of people when training camp starts. So I think he's making the right progress, but I think as you guys talk to him too, you enjoy his personality.
And then we asked his teammate Lloyd Cushenberry, the Titans' new center, about what he has seen in the rookie so far. Here's what Lloyd had to say.
Intelligent. He's picking up just like everybody else, and he's picking up smart. He has total control of the offense in and out of the huddle. And, you know, I can see the improvement just from my short time being here. He's taking steps and becoming the guy.
Now, we've got video here of the sled performance from JC, and before we show those, I know you've listened to both of the Bussin' with the Boys podcasts so far with Ran and with Brian. JT, it has struck me, and as I think it would anybody else, that them constantly talking about these stories of, you know, we've had coaches get frustrated with JC, like not frustrated, but like exasperated trying to get him off the practice field because he's doing so much side solo work. Constantly out there in the afternoons after practice, working on trying to master this sled or this technique. He clearly has taken it upon himself. And it's funny, the level of frustration we felt from him on May 10th during rookie minicamp. This sled that is difficult and demands perfect form. It's not about brute strength. It's not about your force and your size. It's about the perfect technique. He has made it his journey, his goal in life to find the perfect way to attack the sled and perfect his form in the process. And so let's play the video from May 10th. Here was him on the second day, I think, of minicamp when media was allowed to come. Here's how he performed against Bertha. And do we have that clip, JT?
Yes.
Okay, so here it is, and he was struggling against it. He told us that day that he was, and we showed this on the show back then. You can see him struggle with this first rep, loses control. Those springs, both up and down and left to right, easy to lose control of it. Forks get stuck in the grass here. He gets another bite, as head coach or big coach Bill Callahan says, and then he gets it moving. This was yesterday. Look at this guy take off with the sled and then slam it to the ground at the end. Let's show that again if we can, JT. He has made this thing his child, his son. This has been his goal in life, clearly, to perfect this sled, and the dividends are showing. It's crazy how much better he is at it now.
Yeah, it was remarkable to watch for sure. Just also you could look just like in the footwork as well. You see the struggle, and then he gets it going. The footwork is more refined. It's more closer to the body. Right? Control is the big thing, I think, right there. Just the power is coming from down there, and he's finally learning how to use that more than the arm strength. He's using where the power naturally comes from.
It's about your base. Yeah, it's about setting a base.
It's about
using your hips
about
properly.
The base. And JC, you see how much he has come from, you know, like 2-3 weeks from now, you know, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, rather. And as Callahan said, he's excited to see where he can be in another 2 to 3 weeks, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something that makes me really excited about him and makes me just fall in love more and more with him as a prospect post the draft here, because
confirmation bias, baby. We love it. We love it.
The infectious personality was something that, you know, on the practice field or in the interview rooms, which was something that we weren't privy to. And now we get to see that, and that whole different side of JC that we couldn't really evaluate come combine or on tape. And I think that's something that's really starting to show, and why he was their guy there at 7.
Bottom line, he is not a Boy Scout rookie. He's an Eagle Scout rookie. And that's it's a dream for a front office, for a coaching staff, in your first round pick in particular, when you have a guy come in and have that Eagle Scout mentality of, I'm not only going to follow all the rules, I'm going to go above and beyond to try to earn every badge, man. I'm going to try to speed run it and master it all first and better than everybody else in the team, everybody else in the league. That's the mentality you want, and it couldn't be any more different from some Titans experiments at tackle positions in the past, who will go unnamed. This guy has that, again, as we said with Levis, and like the quarterback aura, the want to, the drive, the determination to be the best. I see a lot of that same thing in JC. Whether or not he ends up being a good player, it's not going to be for lack of trying. It's not going to be for lack of effort. It's not going to be for lack of taking the coaching to heart. This guy's doing everything you could possibly ask of him so far. And I think his coaches are stoked by that, to the point of wanting to talk about it, brag on him, as opposed to keep him humble early on. He is earning his stripes, and that's a very big deal. Michael in the comments asking, I know JC's potential is exciting, and center isn't always the most sexy position, but what about Lloyd Cushenberry? They paid a lot for him. Does he look like he was worth the investment? JT, what do you think?
I mean, talking to him, I think it's exactly what they needed at the center position. The last time they had that hole last year in the absence of Ben Jones, and I think that they've once again found that kind of center commander of the offensive line. I actually got to ask Lloyd Cushenberry about how they are establishing that connection, because we've talked about in the past, knowing your guys around you is half the battle. Technique can take you so far, but if you're not on the same page, kind of like a quarterback to wide receiver connection, if you're not on the same page with the guys next to you, you're going to get your quarterback in trouble. And so I asked him about that and how that's going. He first year for him, first year for JC, Peter Skoronski second year. How are the guys meshing so far? And he said that it's going pretty well for them right now. The most important thing he said was that they spend a lot of time off the practice field as well together, just doing things that aren't football, getting to know each other, getting to kind of build that community with each other. I think was one of the things that he said. And he also just kind of agreed with me and called getting to know each other and getting that connection one of the most underrated parts of a successful offensive line. And so that, for me, to answer Michael's question, it makes me think that he's worth the investment, because he can be that guy who understands the job and how important it is to be connected as an offensive line, as well as, just the stark difference from an Aaron Brewer from a year ago.
Yeah, and as Glory Day Sports says here in the comments, it cannot be overlooked what Cushenberry how Cushenberry, I'd imagine, can help Will Levis make pre-snap blocking adjustments. Yeah, you mentioned the connection between a center and the rest, or just anybody on the line, them playing as one, 100% a big deal. Also a very big deal, the connection that a quarterback and a center have. And Ryan Tannehill and Ben Jones, a big part of their success when that offensive line and offense in general were really humming, was that those two were fantastic commanders, not just during the play, but more importantly, the pre-snap adjustments, setting the team up for success before the ball is even in motion. That's going to be a very big deal. And to have two guys in Will Levis and Lloyd Cushenberry, who both seem to be certainly intelligent enough and driven enough to go above and beyond in preparation, be out preparing their opponents. That's a very big deal. One last clip here from Lloyd Cushenberry. We asked him about Bill Callahan and what he, we heard from Bill a couple of weeks ago, who kind of unprompted was gushing about Lloyd Cushenberry. So we returned the favor and said, was that a big part of why you came here? What are your thoughts on the offensive lineman guru as your new head coach? And here's what Lloyd had to say.
A genius. You can tell why his resume speaks, for itself. With grinding, as you guys probably saw, we out there 20 minutes before, 20 minutes after. So he's always a constant question and to improve. And he's very detailed. Like every single play, it's every single blocking assignment. Everything is just, from the smallest details, he's harping on it.
All right. Any other thoughts on linemen, or do we want to move on to a little Traylon Burks hype train? Is it time to all aboard?
We did kind of talk about it or gloss over it at the beginning there, talking about Dylan Radins. I mean, okay. You talked about how he looked different. I mean, he looks like he added, I want to say, 15 pounds. This is
muscle.
Of muscle,
I mean,
correct.
It's a lean. He's leaner than he used to look, but he's stronger than he used to look to me.
Oh, he looks 10 times stronger than he used to look. And looking there were, I was watching Lloyd, I was watching Peter, I was watching Dylan, and watching JC as well. But I was going to say the fourth guy that really caught my eye yesterday was Dylan Radins. I mean, he was out of those three guys were very powerful, but the next most powerful guy out there who was killing all the drills was Dylan Radins. So something to look out for, I guess, as we continue to go through OTAs and mini camps and whatnot. And Dylan Radins, I think, could be shaping into form where we could see him on the field more often than not come September.
It is May 30th, and I not only am I liable to change my opinion on this, I am going to change my opinion on this. But as of right now, if I had to guess the leaders in the clubhouse for the starting five, left to right, it is J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dylan Radins, Nicholas Petit-Frere. I think those are the guys who don't necessarily, not all of them have that job locked down, but it is theirs to lose as of this moment. Now, the wild cards for me are the guys that have been brought in this offseason that we like Leroy Watson. I don't know how much they love him as a tackle option. Obviously, Bill Callahan has a connection with him, has an understanding of what he thinks he can do. That it was enough for them to go and grab him. And trade for him, right? Send one of those 7th round, or did they trade for him?
Correct.
They traded for him. So I don't know with those guys, but if I had to guess, that's kind of where I'm leaning. And I find that obviously good enough to be successful, but especially on that right side, a couple of interesting guys that we've been talking about for a couple of years now. Man, the potential is there, but they just can't put it together. They can't stay on the field. They can't, whatever it is. If there was ever a time for a coach to get the most out of them, it would be with Bill Callahan. And he has a long track record of getting the most out of guys that previously had been underwhelming or mediocre. If he could turn them into even average players, then you've got yourselves a really interesting group to play offensive line. And with some pretty strong draft pedigree, that would be from left to right. Where was Lloyd Cushenberry drafted? If he was a top 3 pick, then all 5 of them would be 3rd rounds or better picks. And so highly drafted guys, you're getting the most out of them. In hindsight, that certainly makes some sense. As you're looking that up, I'm going to transition us here.
He was drafted in the 3rd round.
Okay, so there we go.
By the Denver Broncos then. So
okay, so a couple 1st rounders, 2nd rounder, and 2 3rd rounders would be what that would that offensive line would be comprised of. On to the Treylon Burks train. I'm going to punch your ticket all aboard here. The hype train has not only left the station, it is screaming down the tracks. It is like the Polar Express when they're on the ice and like the back of the train is going like that's it. It feels like we're nearing derailment because things are so cheery, things are so rainbow unicorn happy sunshine. And I don't think it's a bad thing, right? If the idea is we're going to pump this guy up, listen, Calvin Ridley came out yesterday and was compared, my man, to a mix of AJ Brown and Terrell Owens. Okay, crazy comparisons, but saying it with your chest, I respect that as a teammate 100%. JT, what we want to just get into these videos from him, or did you have an impression from him yesterday?
I mean, he continued to, I think there were some criticisms that he wasn't maybe going full speed last week or 2 weeks ago at OTAs. That was something that I saw a lot online. Man was cooking yesterday. I mean, especially on the opposite side of the field there from where we all were, they were doing a lot more routes down the field, working on that placement of the ball for the quarterbacks. And Treylon Burks was eating all of that up as the deep threat down there with a couple of the tight ends as well. So I think, it definitely warranted. I think that, for right now, the narrative hype train definitely can continue to chug along because so far we see no reason not to. And like you said, these videos are definitely going to back it up from what we heard from himself, but also Calvin Ridley.
All right. So let's just play these videos here. Treylon Burks was speaking with us for the first time this offseason yesterday. And so this first video is about him having all these veterans around him suddenly and what that is like for him as a player who is more tenured on the Titans than them. But obviously they are more tenured in the league. And here's what he had to say.
It brings confidence. It helps confidence. And, it's just them being there helping me. And also them asking me questions, for feedback, like I told the other guys. It's fun being around them and just being able to communicate anything with them, and them help me, and also I help them. So it's been fun.
I'm sorry, we're getting to
second clip here. We asked him about his confidence, where his confidence meter currently is. That's his initial words are going to be the answer to that question, and then follow up about what's the competitive fire for you like when they are bringing in all these guys in the offseason and you're getting bumped down the depth chart. Here were his answers.
I'm real confident. I'm having fun and healthy, and I can't be more blessed.
As a competitor, when you see a Ridley brought in, a Boyd brought in, like, does that push you, or does that kind of light you up a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. But it's fun. Just going out there, seeing what they bring to the table, and then me bringing my A game to the table, and so we just go out there and compete together and have fun.
Has the last couple of years been frustrating?
And finally, my favorite of the 3 videos here. We asked him to describe the new offense, and he has a pretty interesting response.
I mean, it's fun, fast, what I'm used to, something similar to what I did in college, and so just study it, get better at it, and have fun with it.
You change it like it's a clean.
So the thing that stuck out there, sorry, I'm getting texts from multiple people here during the show trying to tell them, hey, I'm busy. Similar to what I did in college is to me the most exciting thing he said in any of those 3 videos. JT, we've been talking for a couple of weeks now, about a couple of months now, actually, about how it sure would be nice for a new offense to try to utilize him in the way that he found success during his college days, largely as a big slot, but just scheming up looks for this guy to get the ball in his hands and be the big, fast, big player that he is. Like, go be a big, fast. Here's the ball. Go do the thing. And I don't know how much of that is going to, be able to happen, just because there's limited opportunities for him with so many mouths to feed. But the opportunities that he does get, I hope that they're intentional, and I hope that they are aimed at utilizing him not just as any big bodied backup X receiver, like, oh, Calvin's out, like, have him in, get him in there to run the Calvin route. No, do the things that Treylon Burks is best suited to do. And then maybe not only is that like going to result in the best results for you as a team and for him as a player, but maybe that's a great place to start for him to build some confidence and build off of those things.
And I think that's going to be the most important in these first 4 to 5 games this season for him, right? Getting him those designed looks that give him the yards after the catch ability to, like you say, just go out there and be big and fast, and then also fast and big. Like, get out there and do what you did best in a little bit more of that yards after the catch receiver that you can see from time to time with a T. Higgins or a Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, and what they kind of were able to build and scheme there for those players. So I think that's where they definitely will start with Treylon Burks. And I think also a little bit Chigakonkwo as well, who we talked to a little bit yesterday as well about some of those things in the offense. He talked about it being a more pass happy offense and that's where he said he loves it because that's what he thrives in. But for both of these 2 young players, getting them those design looks to build the confidence that they may have not had in the earlier schemes in their career, I think is going to be the biggest thing. And that's where you can start to build off more of that and have him become a super key part of the offense later in the season.
And that, I spoke with Zach about this on a football show earlier today. That's kind of how they're approaching it, or at least it seems to be. This is a, for all intents and purposes, his rookie year with this offense, with this coaching staff. They are building him up to trend in the right direction and hit the ground really running at a full sprint for 2025, right? They would love nothing more than to get to the end of this year's season and say, we've got these older receivers. They served us well this year. We got a couple of them that we could let go. We got a couple of them that we got one that we could let go if we wanted to. We've got a couple of them that their contracts are up. And so we got to figure out what the wide receiver plan is now. If Treylon Burks can just slot in, they have the confidence based on this year to say, okay, well, there's one of our answers. Boom, Treylon Burks. He's finally reached his potential. He's still in his rookie contract. Maybe we consider picking up that 5th-year option, whatever it is. He's going to be the guy, and then we can work around that. That would be a massive help for them. And I think that's the intelligent way that they're going about this. We're not expecting much of this guy beyond just prove to us that you can be a solution, a reliable solution for us in 2025.
Yeah, I think that's the end goal, right? Because you would want to continue to build him up that way. And I think, like you said, there's been a lot of talk about, is there maybe there's been rumblings, I guess it's been floated around that
The streets, are they talking?
the streets are saying that maybe could DeAndre Hopkins look for a contract extension before the season, bringing him back for another year.
I think the streets are wrong about that, first of all.
Course.
But
they are, but it is a seed being planted in people's minds. So
Right.
you have to talk about it. Tyler Boyd on that 1-year deal, Calvin Ridley kind of on a sort of 2-year deal, kind of sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
The way you want to look at it. Treylon Burks, if he hits, man, could really fix some problems going down the road.
Right. Last topic here for us, JT. We're going to transition to the defensive side of the ball. 3 videos to show you, and then we are done for today. But first, Caleb Farley. We mentioned him on the last OTA show and tell video we did here. We saw him out there, and we saw him making plays. And it wasn't a ton, but he did have one notable. The one time that I was like, who was? Oh, it's Caleb Farley. Look at that. There's the guy. He's doing the thing. Number 3, big year, big number 3, year 4 for year 4 for number 3. He made a nice pass breakup in coverage on Treylon Burks, and I'm sure it's not the first time he's been out there during team drills, doing team things since his injury. I'm sure I've just missed it or forgotten, but it was the first time I noticed like he's doing football things, not special teams things, but like cornerback things. Again, expectations tempered so low they're almost underground, but they're like hovering above the ground, just like a couple of centimeters, couple inches off the ground, where it's like maybe it's in the back of my mind as a perhaps that he could be a contributor of some kind this season. And if somehow this coaching staff manages to get that, first of all, they should sign 12-year contract extensions. But also, it'd be an interesting one because that's the ultimate. What do you do with this guy if somehow he was like, let's say, God forbid, one of their starting cornerbacks go down mid-season, and Caleb has worked his way up to the point where they're like, let's throw Caleb in there. Let's see what happens. And it's like, oh, this guy can play. He's our cornerback 4. He's our cornerback 3. Holy. Then what do you do? Like, what's next with this guy? I have no idea. We won't spend 10 minutes here talking about it because we're not going down that road. But I'm just saying that's where that is the thought process that one Caleb Farley play
breakup
on a field.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, my mind goes, that's so Raven, like down the future path of what is potentially going to happen. We're not going to get there. But the universe of possibilities for Caleb Farley, it's expanding. That's all I'm saying. Probably not, but it might be. This first video about actual players that are going to be playing on the defense this year for the Titans is from Brian Callahan talking about having Tyler Boyd and Chidobe Awuzie on the team, 2 familiar former Bengals faces, how valuable that is to have these guys. And we'll show this as kind of a primer to hear some thoughts from Chidobe himself.
They're a huge asset to me personally. They're a really huge asset to our locker room and the players here. They do have some familiarity with how we want to do business and what we want our team to look like. On top of the fact that they're both still really fantastic football players, that's the first thing. We always want as many good players as we can find, and those 2 fit the bill. But then there's just an element of familiarity. I love seeing both of them every day. It gives me some comfort. That part's nice. And then again, they've got some Tyler in particular, because he's been in the system, allows him to have some wisdom and be able to impart some advice on guys in terms of the system. He's been in it for a long time, so it's a really valuable person to have in here for our receivers and for me. And Cheeto is just everything you ever want your football players to be about. He's about it, and he's a huge addition for us on the defensive side.
Everything you ever want is extremely high praise. So let's hear from Mr. Everything You Ever Want in Cheeto. His first clip here, I believe the first one, JT, asking about Cheeto joining this defense, what it's going to look like with DC Denard Wilson. What is he most excited about, and what is important?
Genius.
Wrong one. Okay.
Take 2?
Let me see. Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Perhaps. Do I need to vamp for a moment?
You do. 'Cause
Okay, I'll vamp for a minute.
This is the one that when you were having technical difficulties.
This is a big part of the reason why we were late today. Yeah, we'll
Yes.
see if you can get that pulled up. generally speaking, the reason we're showing the next two clips, one from Cheeto and one from Arden, is this the one?
This is it. I believe.
Okay, so let me set it up real quick. The reason we're showing them is because yesterday we kind of got our first glimpse into the players' excitement level surrounding this defense and why. Like, well, what exactly about the defense are they stoked about? We'll break down their answers, but here they are.
Oh no, I think it's very important. Number one thing, it starts with Coach Wilson right now. Just setting the new defense. Setting the standard. It's everybody's matching each other's intensity. Right now, he's the one who's really setting the tone in the meeting room, and we got to come out here and match his intensity. At some point, us players, when we get comfortable with the system, we're going to be the ones setting the tone and the intensity, and the team going to match us. So we're still on that path, and it's a long road to be, but everybody has that same vision in mind, that aggressiveness. We just got to get there. We're far away right now, but we're going to get there.
And then, JT, do you want to give you a second to pull up that Arden one? We got a second clip here from Arden Key. I asked him this question. What are you most excited about with this defense, and how do you think it's going to complement your skill set in particular? Because he was talking vaguely and then sort of not so vaguely about how there were some frustrations with last year's defense, frustrations surrounding the way that they practiced and then the way that some of the defensive players, especially up front, were utilized. And so, JT, as soon as we can get that clip, here we go. Perfect.
I can only speak for the up front D-line. D-line, everything is vertical in the backfield, 2-3 yards in the backfield, and it's unlocking a lot of our talents. It ain't just sitting at the line, holding up, eating up blocks, and staying at the line of scrimmage. No, we make that 2-3 yards in the backfield, and the teams I've been a part of, that was a great defense. You make those plays 2-3 yards in the backfield.
Are you still the same?
So we also heard from Roger McCreary yesterday, and I don't have any video from it, but we heard from those three defensive players. I did, at least primarily. And the common theme was the intensity, the aggressiveness, but in particular, the verticality, the getting upfield, the coming downhill, screaming downhill, being aggressive towards the quarterback. That's not something we weren't expecting. That's kind of what we were expecting the Darrell Wilson defense to look like, because that's a lot of what the Ravens did with a lot of success and where he's coming from a coaching pedigree. But I think that it's going to be exciting to see some of these, in particular, the upfront players, the guys that are playing in the box, just scream upfield and collapse the pocket, get on the quarterback from a vertical standpoint. And a guy like Arden Key, I think, those longer, bendier, faster athletes, maybe not the biggest guys, but the long, fast, bendy. Rashad Weaver fits the bill. Go be long, big, fast, bendy guy. That's the role they're going to use him in. I think that's the role they're going to try to use Arden in this year. Just get upfield as fast as you freaking can, bend on the quarterback, and force him to move somewhere. Get him off his spot. Make the pocket move. Force him into the laps of the two big fellas. I don't know if you've met T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, but they're sitting right there in the middle. Make him go say hello to those fellas. That's the kind of thing that they're going to be looking to do, and I can't wait to see them. Let's do one thing at a time. I can't wait to see them to strap on the pads and do the thing in practice in August at the very least.
And me too, right there, because you want to see all the pieces kind of work together and see how that comes to fruition. I think you mentioned the biggest part there is that they've brought in this guy like T'Vondre Sweat to basically kind of have some relief on some of those guys like Arden Key and maybe a Rashad Weaver and especially Harold Landry, letting them kind of be who they are and do their job instead of having to do some other jobs that are not exactly what they're supposed to be doing there a day in and day out. Being able to do your job and do it effectively, I think, is the biggest thing that they want from this team. And I think that's kind of what Arden was maybe alluding to a little bit, just being able to be a little bit more free in your own game and do what you do best.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Anything else today? Anything from the comments?
We do. I mean, speaking of T'Vondre Sweat, Kenneth does ask another Sweat no-show. Really would love some clarity on that.
You're not going to get it. It's May. It's an injury. We heard reporting from Paul, because he's as well sourced with random guys in the building to get this kind of information as any of us are. We heard from him yesterday that Kaharski, that is, that he was close to practicing yesterday. It's still a cautionary preventative measure for him not to be out there, and that it's not something the team is worried about. So that's the clarity you're going to get. him not being out there for OTA, if he, it's probably a soft tissue thing. If I had to just guess, probably a hamstring or something like that, where you're just not wanting to make it, there's no reason to push that potentially lingering issue further into the summer. Let's get it healed up so that he can be back on the tracks for sure at 100% come the end of July. So there we go. Appreciate all of you guys, Kenneth and Derek and Gloria Day, and all you guys that were in the comments today. Michael and Vibe Runners, you guys are awesome. We appreciate everybody that listens to the show live, or the clips on YouTube, or the shorts on YouTube, or the traditional podcast version, or the Twitter version. There's so many different ways to consume the Hot Read podcast. Wherever you do, make sure you're throwing us some love for the work that we're doing for you. Hitting like, hitting subscribe, hitting share, telling a friend about the show. Be a friend, tell a friend if they are a fan of the Titans. I'm sure they'd be a fan of this show. We'll be back next week on Tuesday. 3 consecutive days of OTAs next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for Tuesday's show.
Camp, baby.
All right, Tuesday's show, we'll be talking about what we saw and heard on Tuesday. So we'll talk to you then. Until then, for producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. Have a great weekend.